and girls, it's Miss Bissell. I am getting ready to go over your topic 4 and 6 test on multiplying and dividing whole numbers and decimals. So as I go over this, you should be looking at each of your problems. You can pause the video to compare your work each step of the way to what I worked out on my work. You probably want to take some kind of a red pen or colored pencil, and any of the problems that you missed, let's try to identify why you missed it. So I'm thinking it's one of two things, either procedural errors or careless mistakes. So procedural errors would be if you did not understand the steps to multiplication or division. It would also include if you didn't understand the decimal rules and didn't really use estimates so that you could still place decimals in most all the problems without knowing the decimal rule, just by having a good estimate. Careless errors I see a lot with multiplication and division, just because we don't know a math fact or we miss a math fact, or when we're adding partial products and we regroup, we forget what we regrouped. I see careless addition and subtraction errors. So really try to identify what kind of mistakes you're making so that you do not continue to make those same kind of mistakes. I guess the next thing that you need to make sure is that if you still don't understand a question, maybe put a question mark out to the side and you can ask me when you see me in class next time. All right, so let's get started. Questions 1 and 2 were multiplying decimals. So I'm going to start with question number 1. I'm multiplying 2 and 5/10 times 1 and 25/100. So with my test taking skills, I always talk about those. We have check-ins that are state assessments, and then we have the end of grade test, which is a state assessment. And in order to do our best, we also have to be good test takers. So we know that when we have open response questions, which they call numerical entry, where there's no answer bank, you want to have an estimate if possible, so you can check that your answer is correct. And then you also want to check your work. Again, you've got to think about if you have the time to do that. If you work very carefully and you're somebody that works slow, you may not have the time to check all your problems. All right, so number 1, I rounded up 2 and 5/10 to 3. I rounded down 1 and 25/100 to 3. I'm going to treat this as multiplying 125 times 25. I have my two partial products. When I add them together, I get 3, 1, 2, 5. I can either use my estimate and a little bit of number sense to place the decimal point correctly so that I have a whole number close to 3, or I can count the number of digits behind the decimal points in my two factors, and I see there are 3 of them. I showed you in class, I always notate that, and then in my product, I make sure I place the decimal point so I have 3 numbers behind it. So I have an estimate of 3. My answer is 3 and 125 thousandths. All right, so number 2, 30 times 4 and 5/10. I keep my first digit 30. My second factor, I round up to 5. I get a real quick estimate of 150, a little bit of an overestimate. I multiply it as if I'm multiplying 5 times 30. If I have a 0 in the tens place of my bottom factor, I can do the shortcut where I just put down the 0 and I start multiplying by the 3. So I get 135 decimal point 0. That is very simply the whole number 135. I do not need the decimal point or the 0 behind whole numbers. Number 3 is our first division problem, and it comes with an answer bank. So I'm not going to get I did get an estimate. I'm not going to check it for sure. I know I didn't check 1 and 2. I worked very carefully, but if I wanted to check them, I would probably just go out to the side on another piece of paper and re-multiply and make sure I got the same answer. All right, so this one, I have 5 is my divisor. I'm going to keep it 5. I know my 5 facts. A number very close to the whole number part of my decimal is 56. A number very close to that is 55. So real quick estimate, 55 divided by 5 gives me an estimate of 11. When I divide, I notice that my decimal is in the dividend only. So the rule is pop it up. Working with graph paper, I should have straight columns and straight rows. All right, I get 11 decimal point 25. I start dividing in those tens place. I notated my steps of division out to the side. So as I work through the problem, I divide, then I multiply, I subtract. I always check that that difference is less than the divisor. If not, I need to go back and I need to fix my quotient. I need to adjust it. And then if it is smaller, I can go ahead and bring down the next number. If I bring a number down, the rule is I have to go back to the first step and I have to at least work through checking the next time. All right. Finding the product. By the way, the answer was B. Finding the quotient of 40 and 8800ths divided by 56. So I look, my dividend is less than the divisor. So my answer is going to be between 0 and 1. So we talked about this. If my answer is going to be less than 1, and I don't have a divisor less than 1, I'm going to just put down that my answer is going to be less than 1, and I'm going to move on. So 40 and 8800ths, the decimal point is in the dividend. I pop it up. I am looking, and I'm actually going to have to divide 56 into those 408 tenths. So my answer begins over the tenths place. My first step of division gets recorded here. When I'm done, I get 73 hundredths. Again, if I want to check it, I can always, with multiplication or division, I can multiply the quotient times the divisor. It should equal the dividend. It did. So I know without a doubt that I have number 4 correct, even though it's numeric entry and there's no answer bank. Number 5. We're multiplying. Again, we have 2 decimals. I round 2 6/10 up to 3, 7 3/10 down to 7. I get a quick estimate of 21. 26 times 73, here are my partial products. If you put the 73 as the top factor, your partial products will be different, but we should still have 1898 as our total product. I can either look at my estimate to place my decimal point in a reasonable place so that my answer is close to 21, or I can count that I have 2 decimal digits, 2 numbers behind the 2 decimal points in my 2 factors, and I get 18 and 98 hundredths. Again, if I wanted to check that one, I honestly probably on a separate sheet of paper would just multiply again and compare and make sure I got the same answer on both. Number 6. We have division with an answer bank. So I am noticing that I am for the first time dividing by a decimal that's less than 1 whole. Again, I'm just going to tell you my answer is going to be way less than 1. I'm not going to invest my time on getting a estimate on this. If anything, I'm going to switch that time investment to checking it. This one I may not need to check because my answer is in the answer bank. So I think I can save time on multiple choice if my answer's there. So let's talk about this. We cannot have a decimal in the divisor. So we looked at class and we talked about if we multiply a decimal or a divisor and a dividend by the same power of 10, it's going to give us a new divisor and dividend, but it's going to have the same answer. So let's look at what we talked about in class. This is what we talked about. So if I had 25 divided by 5, we know that basic fact is 5. But if I were to multiply the dividend and the divisor by 10 to the first power, I have a new set of divisor and dividend, which is 250 divided by 50. But it's still going to give me the same product or quotient. Now go back. If I multiply that divisor and dividend by 10 to the second power, 100, I get new divisor and dividend, 500, 2,500. And 2,500 divided by 500 is still 5. So what we saw in class is that if we maintain that equality by multiplying both the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10, we're going to have the same answer each time. So building on that little piece of knowledge with whole numbers, that explains why we can do what we're getting ready to do, which is we need to get the decimal divisor to a whole number. So the only way I can get 4/10 to the whole number 4 is multiply it by 10 to the first power. Multiplying by 10 moves the decimal behind it, and it gives me the new divisor of 4. But if I multiply the divisor by 10, I have to multiply the dividend by 10, and 33 times 10 is 330. So you can see where I rewrote the problem, 330 divided by 4. Now when I finished here, I had 82 with a remainder 2. Now I can't have a remainder with decimal division. We talked about that in class. So what I'm going to need to do is be able to come up with another 0 so I can keep dividing. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to put a decimal point behind 330, so I keep it that whole number 330, and then I annex a 0 in the tenths place so that I can bring it down and now divide 4 into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20, so now I'm done. My answer is 82 5/10. So in red is what I had to annex to keep dividing, so I didn't have a remainder with a decimal number. So boys and girls, to check it, I can take this 82 5/10 and multiply it times, I did not check it, my bad. I could, if I wanted to, multiply it times 4/10 and make sure it's 33, but I did not have to because my answer was C in the answer bank. Again, test taking. Some of you are really not finishing some state tests, and you have plenty of time, but you need to work smarter and faster than harder and slower. So on multiple choice answers, you really do not need to check your answer, again, unless it's something where you have one of those multi-step problems that are going to go into a bar diagram. Those are quick and easy and necessary to check because they're multiple steps. All right, number 7. We're back to finding the product. I'm multiplying 4 15/100 times 3 6/10. It's open response. Both of the factors round to 4 to give me an estimate of 16. I look, 415 times 36 is 14940. I can place the decimal using number sense to make sure my answer is close to 16, or I can use the decimal rule. I have 3 digits behind the 2 decimal points in my factors. I place the decimal point, so I have 3 digits behind the decimal point in my product. Guys, 14 940 thousandths is equivalent to 14 94 hundredths. I don't need the zeros in the thousandths place because it holds no value. So 14 94 hundredths should be my answer. If you did enter it as 14 940 thousandths, it would be counted correct because that is an equivalent answer. All right, let's move on. Next one, 558 divided by 300. So number 8 is a whole lot like number 6. So when I divide, I have 558 divided by 300. My answer is obviously going to be a lot smaller than 1 whole because I'm dividing by a very small, it is not. It's going to be larger than 1 whole. I did that on both of them. Go back. My answer is greater than 1. When I multiply or divide by a decimal less than 1, I'm going to have a larger number than 1. I'm sorry, it's very early in the morning. All right, so let's go back to number 5. So I cannot divide by a decimal divisor. So I need to make this a whole number. So I can multiply 300 times 10 to the second power. If I do that, I also have to multiply the dividend by 10 to the second power. So 300 times 100 gives me the new divisor of 3. 550 times 100 gives me the new dividend of 55,800. I didn't have to annex anything, just straight up division, and I get 18,600. Now this is open response. I may want to check that one. So I'm going to take 18,600. I'm going to multiply it times 300. I only had to multiply it times the 3. I get 558. decimal 00, which is 558, which is my original dividend. So I know that 18,600 is correct. Number 9, I'm dividing 4 6800ths by 10. So we learned in lesson 6.1 that when we divide a dividend by a power of 10, we can just pick up the decimal point and move it. If our power of 10 is a whole number power of 10, we move the decimal to the left, because when we break 4 6800ths into 10 equal groups, each group will have less than one whole. So as I divide, I'm going to move that decimal one place to the left. It ends up in front of the 4, so I have 468 thousandths. I always put a 0 in the ones place to show that there is no ones, and to show that I just remembered that and didn't forget to put a digit there. 468 thousandths. Number 10, we're going to start with word problems. So word problems is basically how do we use these concepts of multiplying and dividing decimals in the real world. So number 10, a car company charges 7 cents per mile for a rental car. I can promise you that's on top of the base price to rent the car. If a customer drives 42 miles, how much will the mileage charge be? So guys, 7 cents per mile is the unit rate. So to figure out how many, what the charge will be for 42 miles, we just multiply 7 cents times 42, and we get 294. Now, this is money, so I need to clean this answer up a little bit. I first put my decimal so that I have 2 decimal digits in my product. I have 2 decimal digits in my one factor. And then I take the 0 out of the tens place. It holds no value. And this is $2.94. So real quick, I get my answer B. Number 11. Kamari spent $74.92 on Christmas presents for her 4 cousins. If she spent the same amount on each, how much did she spend on each cousin? So I kind of double underlined some of the key words that indicated to me that this probably is a division problem. All right, and then I put it through my sentence starter. Can I answer this question, how much did she spend on each question, by splitting $74.92 between the 4 cousins? And since the answer is yes, then I'm dividing. So I'm going to get a quick estimate. I'm going to keep my divisor 4. I know my 4 facts. A number close to 74 that's divisible by 4 is 80. So we say it's compatible. 80 divided by 4 gives me a quick estimate that she's going to spend about $20 on each cousin. So I think that I can go ahead and eliminate A and B from my answer bank just looking at the value of that. It would be silly to pick A because she would be spending more on each cousin than what she had to spend on all 4 of them total. All right, same thing with B pretty much. All right, so let's divide. So our decimal is in the dividend. So all we have to do is pop it up. Our first step of division, we're dividing into the 7 in the tens place. So we're going to start in the tens place. I finished dividing. I didn't have any remainders, and I got that she's going to spend $18.73 on each cousin. D is my answer in the answer bank. I am not investing any time to check this answer. I worked carefully. It's close to my estimate. It's in the answer bank, and time is of the essence. I've got to work smarter and faster so that I finish test in allotted time. All right, let's go to number 12. Here we have Reggie, who pays $982.27 each month to rent an apartment. How much will it cost him to rent the apartment for 1 year? So I have a little reminder here. Remember to round your answer to the nearest hundredth since you are working with money. All right, so he spent $982.27 each month. And if we want to know how much he spent for a year, the first thing we have to know is that there's 12 months in a year. Then we have to combine 12 groups of $982.27 because that's your unit rate. When we multiply, I can get a quick estimate. I can keep 12. I'm good at multiplying by 12. 982 rounds up to 1,000. I have a quick overestimate of $12,000. I think I can probably eliminate for sure A and maybe B from my answer bank. When I go over here, I multiply 98227 times 12. I get 1178724. I either use my estimate to put my decimal in, or I count the number of decimal digits behind my 1 decimal point in my 1 factor, and I should have 2 decimal digits in my product. That would be $11,000, or $11,787.24, answer D. All right, let's go to number 13. The cafeteria cooks are making 8 batches of cookie. Each batch of cookies needs 1 7/500 sticks of butter. So almost 2 sticks. As a matter of fact, we round up to get a quick estimate of 16. I know I'm multiplying because if this is the amount of butter needed in 1 batch and I have 8 batches, I'm combining 8 groups of 1 7/500. Your classic multiplication setup. 175 times 8 is how I treated this. I got 1400 when I multiplied. I have 2 decimal digits in my 2 factors. Only 1 decimal point with 2 digits, so I put the same in my product. 14 and 0 hundredths is 14 sticks of butter. You could use your estimate. It's a little bit of an overestimate to place the decimal point in the product. Either way, you're going to get 14 sticks of butter. Number 14, Amy needs ribbon for a craft project. She buys 14 yards of ribbon for $2.09 per yard. What is the total cost of ribbon for her project? So again, I'm given the unit rate. 1 yard is $2.09. She's buying 14 yards, so I need to combine 14 groups of $2.09. So a quick estimate, 14 times 2 is a little bit of an it's a little bit of an underestimate, my bad, $28. $2.09 times 14. So as I treat it as 209 times 14, you can check your partial products against mine. You get 2926. So you can either use some number sense in the estimate to place the decimal point, or you can count the number of digits behind this 1 decimal point in the 2 factors. I have 2 decimal digits, so I put that in my product, $29.26, answer C. All right, moving right along. Number 15. We have a group of 63 fifth graders who are going on a field trip to the Science Museum. If each student admission cost $9.25, how much did it cost for all the fifth graders to attend? So again, I recognize this as multiplication because I see the unit rate per ticket is $9.25. I need to buy 63 tickets for all students to attend. So quick estimate, 63, I'm going to round to 60, $9.25 to 9. I get a quick underestimate of 540, both my factors rounded down. When I multiplied 925 times 63, you can check your partial products against mine. I get 58275. I can either use the underestimate and number sense to place the decimal, or I can count the 2 decimal digits behind the decimal point in only one of the factors and put it in my answer. And the answer should be $582.75, D. All right, number 16. Keisha bought 4 boxes of crayons for 78 cents each. How much will she pay for the 4 boxes of crayons? Again, I am quickly recognizing this as multiplication. I have the unit rate. Each box of crayons is 78 cents. So if you buy 4 of them, you need to combine 4 groups of 78 cents. So when I multiplied to get my estimate, I rounded 78 cents up to $1. I left the 4. I have a quick overestimate of $4. So I can eliminate C and D from my estimate from my answer bank if my estimate is an overestimate of $4. Now, multiplying 78 cents times 4, 78 times 4 was 312. I can either use my overestimate to place the decimal point, or I can use the decimal rule. I have one decimal point in my two factors with 2 digits behind it, so I need 2 digits behind the decimal point in my answer, and I get B, $3.12. Number 17. All right. This is a multi-step problem. I recognized it when I read it. Kyle spent $19.57 at Domino's Pizza. She's purchased a medium-sized Honolulu Hawaiian pizza for $13.99. She also purchased 2 sodas that each cost the same amount. And I want to know, what is the cost of each soda? So I built my bar diagram to start with. So this is what it looked like initially. I knew that she was buying 3 items, a pizza and 2 sodas, so I break my bar diagram into 3 parts. I know that if I were to add the 3 items together, it would give me the total cost of $19.57. This is so important because when I'm done with this multi-step problem, I'm going to check my answer. It's going to take me 2 seconds to check it, and I will know if I picked the right answer or not. Now, I talked to you about this in class with a lot of the multi-step problems we've worked on, and I said that the state of North Carolina loves to put what you get at the end of the first step in the answer bank. We call that the decoy answer. They're trying to catch students that are not paying close attention to their work, who are in a hurry, who, sadly might be nervous. So we talked about when we do multi-step problems, we need to write what each step represents. So let's talk about it with this problem. I obviously know that to find the cost of the sodas, I need to subtract the pizza price from the total. So that was step 1. And when I subtracted, I have the $5.58 as the difference. But I see that in the answer bank. And a student that isn't paying attention is going to pick that decoy answer, feel good it's in there, move on. No. We need to write down what this actually represents. So $5.58 is not the cost of each soda. If I subtracted the pizza from the total cost, I have the cost of 2 sodas. So I'm going to mark that real quick. Cost of 2 sodas. Now I know that I need to keep going because the question is, what is the cost of each soda? So she bought 2 sodas. So I'm going to divide the total cost of 2 sodas. I'm going to divide it by 2 to get the cost of each soda. This is a decimal division problem with a decimal in the dividend. All I have to do is pop it up. When I start dividing, I'm starting in the ones place. I don't have to do anything. This problem ends with a 0 remainder. $2.79 is what I think is the cost of each soda. So when I put it in the answer bank, when I put it in the bar diagram, I'm going to come over here and check it real quick. It's not going to take long. So when I added $13.99 plus $2.79 plus $2.79, the 3 items, I get $19.57. That told me that $2.79 was indeed the correct answer for the cost of each soda, and I picked it. Number 19, Megan bought 9 pairs for $3.78. How much did each pair cost? So this right here is my stereotypical division problem where I have the total and I need to find the unit rate. If I know that 9 pairs equal this total and I want to find out how much each pair is, I'm dividing. So I already know my answer is going to be less than 1 because my dividend is less than the divisor. I'm going to set it up. I pop up the decimal because I only have a decimal point in the dividend. When I do that, 9 will not divide into the 3 ones. It's going to divide into those 37 tenths. I start my recording of my quotient over the tenths. I get 42 hundredths. This is money. I'm going to put a 0 in the dollar place for $0.42. A. All right, moving right along, number 19. Abby collected money to build a playground. She raised $1,550. In all, 32 people gave her money. What was the average amount donated by each person? Round your answer to the nearest cent. And we say the nearest cent. The nearest penny is in the hundredths place. A penny is a cent, and the cents are 1/100th of a dollar. There's a little reminder here. Remember to round your answer to the nearest hundredth since you are working with money. All right, guys. I noticed this is, again, that stereotypical division problem. You're given the grand total of what she raised. You know 32 people donated. If you want to know what each person donated, you want the unit rate. So 1,550 divided by 32. I'm going to round the divisor to 30. Working with my 3 facts, I find a compatible number, and my compatible number is that 1,500 divided by 30 gives me an estimate of $50 per person. When I divide, I had my work here, and when I multiplied this last step, 3 times 32, I got 96, and then I had a remainder. I cannot have a remainder in a decimal division problem. So I do need to annex a 0. I already had a decimal point, so I can annex another 0, and it's still 1550, 1,550. I use that 0 so that I can bring it down and keep my steps of division. Now, as soon as I figured out that 240 divided by 32, I can make 7 groups, I'm done, because I just placed a digit in the thousandths place. And with money, I need a digit in the thousandths place, so then I can round to the nearest hundredth. So the real question is my answer going to be $48.43 or $48.44? 7 applies to 5 or more, add 1 more, so I'm rounding up to 44 cents. $48.44 is B in the answer bank. A real nasty test maker probably would have put $48.43 in that answer bank just to see if you knew which one to use. All right, the last question. Mrs. Hoots bought a case of eggs. There are 60 eggs in a case at Walmart. She bought them for $5.09. She has a coupon for $1.25 off the case of eggs. What is the cost of each egg after the price is reduced? So guys, this is a multi-step problem. Remember, you're working with money, so round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So the first thing I had to do, she's not paying $5.09 for the eggs if she had a coupon. So we have to subtract the coupon value from the original cost of the eggs to get that the reduced price of the eggs is $3.84. Now, I notated that's what it was because I'm not asked to find the reduced price of the eggs. I'm now asked to find the cost of each egg after the price is reduced. So guys, that's your stereotypical division problem. You're looking for that small unit rate. You know the total cost is $3.84. You know you're splitting it between 60 eggs to get the unit price. So I pop up the decimal point because it is only in my dividend. I noted that I can't divide $3 by 60. I can't divide those 38/10 by 60. I'm going to have to go over to the hundredths. So that tells me I'm starting my answer in the hundredths place. Again, you guys using graph paper and staying in those boxes make your perfect columns and rows to keep your work neat and accurate. So 6 times 60 is 360. So we had 6 hundredths, remainder of 24. Again, you cannot have a decimal answer with a remainder. When we divide divide by decimals in any capacity, we have to keep going until we can round our answer to the nearest hundredth or whatever the directions tell us to round to. So I can annex a 0. It's still going to be $3.84. 84 hundredths and 840 thousandths are equivalent. So in red, I'm showing you I can annex that 0 to use it. I don't change the value of the dividend. Now, 240 divided by 60 is 4. I don't even have to keep going. I just placed a digit in the thousandths place. So now I have to use my decimal or use my rounding rule to decide, does this stay 600ths or do I round it up to 700ths? So 4 or less, let it rest. So it stays 600ths. With money, 600ths is 6 cents. I had to put a 0 over the tenths and a 0 over the ones, and that shows me that each egg is 600ths or 6 cents. A. All right, boys and girls, again, make sure that you notated what kind of errors you were making. If you still have any questions, you can ask me when you see me in our next class meeting. All right, I hope everybody has a great day, and I will see you next class meeting.